Next on the line here is Near. What do you have for us?
Wow. I watched Majo to Yajuu, uh, also known as The Witch and the Beast.
Yes, this is another big series that, or at least another one that was pretty hyped up.
Yeah.
Uh, Again.
It's probably the one that I was kind of like looking most forward to this
Mm-hmm.
season.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is a manga original, sort of action, um, supernatural seinen series.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is done by
Yokohama
Yokohama
Animation Lab.
Animation Lab.
Yeah, they
Um,
did stuff like the Great Cleric, which was that isekai like super like power fantasy cleric thing, right? If I remember correctly.
yeah,
They did Real Romance 2, also known in like the if you read Japanese visual novels, it's Maitetsu essentially animated, right? Um, they did Kingdoms of Ruin, I think last season, which I did not watch, but I don't know how that panned out. I forget if anybody here covered it. I don't think so.
I don't think
But
so.
it didn't seem very good.
No.
And then they did a little bit a while ago. They did the Genius Princess Guide to Raising a Nation Out of Debt. That
Yeah.
one. So yeah, a
Yeah.
couple of fantasy series here and there.
Yeah. Um, so the basic synopsis for this is our main character, Guido, has been cursed by a witch. Um, and there are only two ways to lift the curse of a witch. The first way is to be kissed by a Prince Charming, your true love, basically, right? And the second way is to basically get the witch to change their mind. Um, and in this world, that's probably not going to happen because witches are kind of fucking evil. Um, they're kind of like horrible, awful people, and they're sort of set up in this world. Witches are sort of like these like they're sort of like the strongest spellcasters in the world. Um, they have like super high amounts of mana. They can cast these really powerful spells, um, and their power is sort of hereditary. It's passed down through um, bloodlines, and they live for like hundreds of years as well. They're kind of just like you know uh, basically immortal, but and the main character has been cursed by a witch, and she wants it lifted. Um, and in order to do that, she's sort of um, contracted herself with this mysterious order that sort of sorts out magical incidents. Um, and her main motivation is to hunt down the witch that cursed her and lift the curse, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it sort of just goes from there in
So is this
a
a
largely episodic format.
So
Um,
yeah, is this focused on the journey or is it focused on like the overarching? Oh, we gotta get that witch.
it's very episodic. It's very much like sort of adventure of the week.
Yeah, okay.
They're sort of traveling all over the place. Uh, yeah.
What's the focus of the episodes? Is it focus on like is it like a Majin no Tabi Tabi or like something like that where it's like oh the dark side of the humans or the dark side of the people in this world kind of stuff shit like that
So
the-
it's
or is
very
it like
straightforward. It's
action?
pretty much like they get presented with. So one of the first arcs, the second arc actually,
Mhm.
which I think is sort of the best way to sort of sell this series. Um, straight up, I'll just put this straight forward. I like this series a lot. I really like this
Okay.
series. Um, so the second arc is they're presented with a case where there is a magical serial killer, right? And they're basically exploding corpses and putting them on display like in the middle of the street. Um, and they
Sounds like
leave,
instant death to me.
yeah, they leave these messages that heavily imply that it's a witch, right? And so our main characters, they're like a duo group. One of them's a mage and carries like a big coffin around. Um, and then the other is the girl, Guido. She's sort of the main character, and she cannot cast magic. She kind of just punches things really hard. Um, and so they get called to this case. They go to the city, and the uh, the sort of setup is that like the mayor of this city basically doesn't really want to call in the proper authorities for dealing with a witch because it would cause like a panic or whatever, right? Um, so he calls in the main characters to sort of subtly take care of it. Um, and then they have to work with the only other mage that's in the police force for the city. And she's this like jaded um like detective basically that had her pretty much entire family killed by this witch. And so she's pretty much after revenge, right? Um and as they go through it, it's sort of it pretty much very quickly sort of because you know how a lot of these sort of like darker tone series will kind
Mhm.
of like they'll present the revenge motivation, and one of the characters would be like, you know, is revenge really something that's gonna bring me peace and happiness, right?
Yes, 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 yes,
Um,
yes.
and they present that very early on. And
Okay.
what kind of really sold me on this series is the detective is talking to Ashaf, which is the mage, right? He's a more like cool, like level-headed character, right?
Mhm.
And they're sort of having that discussion, right, where they're going into the detective's backstory, and she's kind of like wondering whether, you know, like solving this case will really like bring closure, right? And I kind of start getting worried, right, because a lot of these series will dwell on that for like the entire fucking arc. Um,
Yes.
but pretty much immediately as that question is presented, Guido butts into the conversation and goes, "Who the fuck cares? You're like
Yeah.
you're pursuing this, so why not see it through and see how you feel afterwards, right?"
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, and that's sort of a consistent like theme for this series is it sort of presents a moral quandary, right?
Mhm.
And it immediately sort of presents that to the viewer. And I feel like the artist is smart enough to know, or the author rather, is like smart enough to know that the viewer probably already has their own like biases and their own like moral determinations on a lot of these questions. And it
Mm.
doesn't really matter whether the series ponders it or not.
And also,
Because
as
the
you
viewer
mentioned, the
the viewer
whole
already like has their own like they already have their own answer, right? They
yeah.
already like somebody reading a series is already going to know whether revenge is like a good idea or not, right?
Yeah, and
So,
also, what you mentioned before about, you know, it's not like the other stuff where, oh, is revenge gonna really put me to peace? It's kind of the implication is also that that's been done about 5 million times before, and we
yeah,
don't need to see it another time.
yeah. And like, further on that, like the, the author knows that the viewer already has like their own sort of preconceived biases and thoughts on this matter. So why wouldn't the characters already have them, right?
Right, right, right.
Another arc in this series revolves around necromancy, right? Um,
Hmm.
and like the necromancy arc is actually pretty interesting because it doesn't follow the main characters. It's like these other sort of like necromancy specialists. So it's sort of an interesting like other perspective thing. Um, and it sort of kind of goes into like you know um like two of these characters are having like this sort of like, oh, like do you agree with like the idea of necromancy, um and this one character is like, no, I don't, I think it's wrong. I think it's just straight up wrong. um this other character is like, oh well, you shouldn't say that around, the necromancy specialist if you want to get on their good side or whatever, right? And by the end of the arc, um, that character like still holds that belief, right? Like he's still like necromancy's
Right,
wrong.
right, right.
Like whether it's, you know, uh, because necromancy in this world is like quote unquote legal, right? But there's a lot of like loopholes you have to jump through. There's like, things you have to sign. There's like you have to get like consent from the person before they die, um, to
It's like organ donor kind of shit.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
the way they sort of
Like
explain it is
donating your
like,
body for science.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
the
yeah.
way they sort of explain the necromancy, the series also has like good, like really good concise world building too. Like it doesn't drag on, and it's
Mhm.
very like to the point.
It has
But
sensible rules.
yeah, the way they explain it is the way necromancy works is um when you die, your soul leaves your body, right? And sort of returns to like this like um
The throne of heroes. Ha ha ha. No.
basically this like spiral, right? Like which is
Mhm.
effectively the root, right? And the soul sort of um breaks down into pieces and gets ready to like reincarnate, right?
Mhm.
Um, but if you decide to raise somebody with necromancy, you're essentially plucking that soul from the spiral and effectively um, forcing it back into the body, right? But
Yeah.
the consequence of that is that soul is now tied to that body forever. Like that soul will never return to the spiral. It will never be reincarnated. So
Oh, okay, okay, okay,
so the
okay.
reason you have to get all these like um consent things, right,
Permissions. Yeah,
is that,
permissions.
if you're doing that without like the deceased party's consent, you're essentially dooming that soul for the rest of eternity to like essentially just like
Sit there
languish
in the body.
forever,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And
Yeah.
so the sort of uh like uh like consequence that the person has to weigh when signing away this thing is whether they want the temporary sort of um extra time, quote unquote, with their loved ones, or the ability for their soul to live on and reincarnate, right?
Mhm.
So it's sort of interesting. Um, but yeah, I really like how this series sort of presents these like moral quandaries and immediately establishes that like these characters already like have their own beliefs on these issues, right? Like
Right, right, right.
they've already thought about this. They've already, um, like they live in this world where these are like real like questions that one has
Yeah,
to
it's
ask
it's not
themselves, right?
it's not it's not a musical where they're just or like a Disney movie kind of thing where it's like, what is this gray morality issue? You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean?
Um, but yeah, other than that, it's a relatively standard sort of villain of the week kind of thing.
Okay.
A lot of them are like 1 to 2 episode arcs. It's very much like
How much of like when they're talking about maybe the world or like the themes or whatever, how fast is the underlying development towards getting to like the witch that Guido wants to kill or whatever?
um I mean, it's not like it doesn't really go towards that like at all. It's kind
Okay,
of
okay.
just
So
like
it is
it's
pretty
kind of like
much
just
just
like
the
the
journey.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like there's that underlying end goal, but like they're kind of just fighting
Yeah, I was
they're
just
fighting
wondering about
mages,
what the
they're fighting
variant of this.
witches. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
Okay, okay, okay,
it kind of just goes on.
okay. Okay.
Um
Pretty good.
but yeah, as
Can
for
yeah, the
audio
visuals?
visuals, yeah, they're interesting. I think the art style is
Okay.
like unironic fucking peak, right?
Okay.
Um it like the way this series is drawn, it really takes me back to like 2012. You know what I mean? With
I know what you're
like
talking about. Yeah.
with something like with like Jormungand or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
way
yeah, yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
way like
yeah.
the eyes are drawn with like the really thick like pointy eyelashes.
Yeah.
Um, like the color palette as well. It's like muted, but it's warm.
Mhm.
Um,
Or even just like a little bit, 1 or 2 years before that, maybe like Durarara or something like that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of times there will be moments where it's like, whether it's, sort of introducing a new character or
Mhm,
sort of like very important moment is happening. They will
mhm,
have these like almost like watercolored like still images that have like this flowery border around it that sort of reminds me of fuck, what was that detective series with the like goth lolly in it? You know what I'm talking about?
Gosick?
Yes, yes, yes. It's kind of reminiscent of something like that. Um, but yeah, it's just a very like sort of nostalgic um art style.
Mhm.
It's really cool. But as for like the animation itself, I mean it's serviceable. The action is okay. It sort of helps that a lot of it is, just casting spells and shit.
Right,
Um,
right,
so there's not too much like choreography that needs to happen. Um,
right.
yeah. As for the soundtrack, the general OST is pretty good. It's got kind of like a funky, like jazzy um vibe to it, which is pretty nice. I
Mhm,
think the OP is pretty forgettable. It's pretty generic. Um, the ED is quite nice, I think. It's got a nice like um, storybook sort of visual to it. Um, the song is also quite chill, quite mellow. It's Kari no Thrill by Yoshino Nanjo. It's quite
Oh, okay.
good.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice, nice.
The voice cast for this series is kind of insane, in my opinion. Um,
Cool.
the two mains, Guido is voiced by Yu Tachi. She has a pretty good voice. She's doing this sort of tough girl, like delinquent voice. Um, Ashaf, the mage dude, voiced by Toshiyuki Morikawa. He's doing this sort of like calm, cool, collected, yet confident, sort of braggart, like con man kind of thing. He's quite
Mhm,
good at it. Um, some of the side characters in this are a bit crazy. The Necromancy like specialist is voiced by Hayami Saori.
mhm,
Um, like the one of the like one-off like um mage like soldier commander people is voiced by Kobayashi Yu. Um, one of the other the like the ice commander dude is Ishida Akira. Um, the who is it? The detective girl I was talking about earlier is voiced by where is she? Um, Junko Minagawa, who famously
mhm.
voiced Sailor Uranus.
Oh
Um,
shit. Yeah,
she
I
does
remember
she
that.
does a really really fucking good job as well.
Mhm,
Um, the witch from like the first arc is voiced by Hikasa Yoko. Um, yeah, there's a lot of like one-off characters in this series that are kind of just voiced by like, you know, quite popular VAs, which is pretty
And I also
surprising.
think, and I also think that like the choice for Guido, like there could be have been, there are plenty of um more kind of rough and tumbling kind of voices that are still that are still feminine. Like you could have again, like Kobayashi Yu could have been Guido,
Yeah,
or you could
definitely.
have had Koshimizu Ami. You could have had the voice actor for Ryder, for instance, Asakawa Yu, stuff like that.
Yeah,
There are a couple of other choices, but the choice to use Taichi Yo, who is very famous for doing a lot of uh, like kind of shota, like small male boy, kind of boy, very like obviously boyish they're boys, right?
yeah,
Characters as well as some other kind of more uh, how do I say it, like Onesan kind of or older kind of rough and tumbling roles, like Dorothy and Princess Principal, for example, stuff like that. Um, the choice to use her for the voice, I think, turned out to be pretty good as well. I saw some of the episodes and I was like,
yeah,
oh, okay, this is a pretty interesting choice.
yeah. She does a
That
really
worked
good
out pretty
job.
well. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, other than that, I mean, I think pretty much all the characters, I think they jive quite well. Um, it's a pretty, it's a very serious series. Like, there's not really any, because like even in something like
It's not like
say,
Marvel comedy kind of
yeah, even in
thing. Like
something like
yeah.
say like Helsing, right? There's like comedic moments. This doesn't really have that. There's a few more light-hearted moments, but there's still, it's kind of just like Guido and Ashraf, um, bantering. You know, they have sort of an interesting dynamic. That's, they're obviously friends, right?
Right.
Um, but it's sort of a friendship where like, you know, one of them threatens to kill each other all the time, kind of thing. Um, you know, but it's not like there's no like slapstick. You know what I mean? It's sort of like just more lighthearted moments. But other than that, it's pretty toony. It's pretty dark. It's pretty serious. But um, it's not like edgy. You know what I mean? Like there are definitely moments that are like,
They're not trying to push it by being like, we're only doing
yeah, like there are moments where characters are like fucking filled with fucking nails and shit. And they're bleeding all over the place. But it's kind of just like part of the world. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
it's
They're
not like a
not like
fucking like blood sea thing where somebody is like being ripped in half by a giant monster for no reason at all.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Gotta
it's
leave
kind of
that to
just
my
like,
series here.
yeah, it's kind of just like uh, you know, magic in this world is kind of fucked up actually. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, like I don't know, it's toony. But it's like unapologetic. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Which is I think kind of what sells it. Um,
And it's not pushing it too hard.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
probably
Um, But yeah, I really like this series a lot. It's like I said, it feels very nostalgic. Um,
yeah,
if you're like
especially the
pining,
artwork again.
yeah, if you're like pining for sort of like something like a Jormungand, like that like era of like
Hmm.
seinen, where it was like, like it was dark, it was bloody, but it wasn't like, like it wasn't blood
Like
pinata
fuck
type
you,
shit
head
all the
getting cut
time.
off, kind of. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like, um, it's good. There's no like dumb conspiracy shit happening.
Hmm.
It is literally just like the two main characters are like they're on a witch hunt, and
Yeah.
they hunt witches, they hunt mages. Um, it's good. It's
Uh,
fun.
what Mal rating would you give it?
Um, I think I'd probably give it a solid 8.5.
Okay.
I like it a lot.
Any last words?
Um, no, I mean, check it out. It's good.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Near. Again, this is one of the series that I think was hyped up. At least one of the unique series that was or non-sequel series that was hyped up more. Majo to Yajuu. I think it has a 7.2 on Mal. I think people do like it quite a lot here as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, done by Yokohama Animation Lab, who did the Might Have stuff, great series recently. And they really pulled out all the stops on this one. So please do check it out if you do like this sort of darker, kind of episodic adventure kind of stuff. Some pretty unique characters and perspectives. So yeah, check it out.